Hello, soul sister. Welcome to another episode of Midlife Love Out Loud. And I have Andrea Hipps in the house, a certified divorce coach, and she's got so much to offer to you. Hey, Andrea, so good to have you here.
I'm super thrilled to be here. Thank you so much.
You know, I have so many people on my podcast. We talk about divorce. We talk about the nuances of starting over. And I love what we're going to do right now. But first, because it's different. There's some tips that Andrea is going to give you that you're going to friggin' love. But first, let me tell you a little bit about her. As I said, she's a certified divorce coach and an author who helps parents all along the divorce continuum resolve their divorce debris and create beautiful to-address families for their kids. I love that. She's the author of the internationally best-selling book, The Best Worst Time of Your Life, 4 Practices to Get You Through the Pain of Divorce. And it outlines the 4 practices you need to create wholeness and healing for you and your kids before, during, and after divorce. As a regular contributor to our nation's divorce recovery conversation, she's been featured on NBC, ABC, Fox, and the CW discussing how we could do divorce better for the sake of ourselves and our families. Yes, sister, that is like huge, important work because let's face it, divorce is a thing. It is here. And I wish there were more people doing what you're doing to help people through this process. So I'm so glad for what you're bringing to the table.
Thank you. Yeah, we're just trying to redefine what divorce means, right? Because culture has co-opted it to mean devastation, darkness, and resentment. And I think there is a wave of people who are very curious, what would I have to do to get to a different place? And my secret sauce is really, we're going to do this even if your former partner does not participate.
So true. So true. Because as you were listing that, I was thinking the first thing I said, well, it's the first thing my ex-husband said to me when I said, we're done. We need to get a divorce. He said, so much shame. Our son is going to have to deal with so much shame. And I looked at him and I said, do not put that on him. If you're feeling shame about it, if you need to work through shame, please do. It doesn't have to be like that. But that's the thing. Mm-hmm. Everybody, we're not taught how to do this. And thankfully right. you have some golden nuggets. So I would love to first hear a little bit about your story. How did you end up with this group of people that you're serving?
Yeah, sure. No, I went through my own divorce about a decade ago. And when I was going through it, I looked around in my community and I saw exactly 0 people who were divorced who I wanted to model my life after.
Right. Yes.
Yes. It was sort of a tragic inventory that I took. And I thought, well, if no one's there leading the way for me, I'm going to just keep fighting and learning and growing so that I can develop the thing that I think I'm going to want, even though I didn't want the divorce. What's the life that I could create even with this storyline, right, in my life? And so I just kept looking for ways to genuinely be in my life differently, not in a fake way. And one of the things you'll hear me rant on a lot if you follow me anywhere is, the general advice is just don't talk bad about your former partner in front of your kids. And that's great advice, but it is super incomplete advice, because if you don't talk bad about them, you raised smart kids and they're already going to know that you hate them. You don't have to say it. You just don't have to say it. They already know.
They're smart. They can see your facial expressions when you're on the phone and your frustration and
and just your energy, right? And so I had to do the work of figuring out, how do I actually re-engage this relationship full of so much pain, full of so much disappointment, full of so much just what felt like betrayal ultimately, right? And rework a new relationship to him, not with him, a new relationship to him, where I could actually start looking at what is he going to get right, even in the midst of all the things I know he's going to get wrong. And then I can not only not say anything bad about him, but I could actually get to the point where I could say something good about him to myself, good about him to my kids, and ultimately good about him to him, which is, the best.
Wow. I mean, again, that's the ideal for us to look for the golden lining, or the silver lining, golden lining, the silver lining. I think it's because my hair just got really golden.
Gold over silver. That sounds better.
Gold, so the golden line. Let's just go there.
Yeah.
And of course, if we're just, it's like everything. If we're focusing on the negative, we're going to obsess about it and feel it versus what is good there. And then we can go there, and that changes the story. Love it. Love it. Speaking of stories, and thank you for sharing that. Speaking of stories, what do you suggest when it comes to the dating realm and you're meeting somebody new, you've got this new person? How do you suggest you tell the story to this new person?
Yes, I love that question because it really gets at when we go on a date, we want to be known, right? We're like getting to know you. So as a result, I want to share with you about me. And for people who are on the back end of a divorce, who are re-entering the dating field, a big part of knowing me is that I just went through about 2 or 3 years of getting wrecked, right? It was a big deal to get divorced. I have met nobody for whom it is a little deal. It is a big deal, right?
Yeah, on so many levels, on so many levels.
It undoes, it touches every part of your life. And so when you get to that date and they start asking about who you were, the divorce becomes the story of who I am and what I am. And my sort of warning about that is, I want people to go into their first dates post-divorce single, not divorced. When you are single, you are saying my attachment is to myself. When you go in divorced, your description of yourself comes in as what I'm no longer attached to. Does that make sense?
It does, because this is your identity. How are you identifying yourself? If you identify yourself as this person that just got divorced, that's a whole different energy and a whole different story versus this is who I am. So what happens then? You're meeting somebody, you're connecting with them, and they say, so you're divorced. What happened? What's the response? What do you suggest?
And it's a fair question, and it's going to come up and you are going to talk about it. But I would say a general rule of thumb is it shouldn't be talked about on your first date. It just shouldn't. What should be talked about in your first date is who you are now and what you are looking forward to enjoying in the future, so that you can start taking the temperature of the person sitting across from you to see if they have any interest in what you're casting forward. Don't ask them to have interest in casting backwards. My goodness, that's done. That's finished. What's ahead is the part we want to be thinking about. And so when we're talking about our divorce story, first of all, it's off limits for the first date. Second, when you do start talking about it, I want you to be able to talk about it. And this might sound a little woo or a little hokey to people, but I want you to think about it as the hero's journey, right? The mythology hero's journey is really you as a person set out on an adventure. You encountered conflict. That conflict transformed you. And this is who you are today, sort of returning home to yourself. And that's a weird narrative for people, right? We don't often think, oh, I went out on a journey to get a divorce and my life fell apart, right? But when you start thinking about
the descent, and now this is who I am.
Right. And put on your armor and get your sword. But when you really start thinking about it like that, isn't that the story you want to tell? I think most of us on the back end of a divorce are pretty darn impressed with the fact that we made it through. That's a story that the people sitting across from us want to hear. And that's a story that they want to enter into with us. When you start telling the story from, I'm victim, I was wronged, you're setting the stage to invite that person into a story you don't even want to be living. So the bottom line of the story is you are the hero of the story. You can tell that story without your former partner being the villain. Drop the villain narrative and really own and lean into the hero one.
Yes. And of course, that's always been a red flag when you start to hear the other person say, she's a bitch, she's such a pain in the ass, blah, 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 blah. I would love to role play with you for a second. So I'm the guy dating you. We're on our first date, everything you just said. And I say to you, so you're divorced. What happened? How was it for you? What's your answer?
You know what? It's a very interesting story, and I would love to get in it with you. Maybe, I don't know, second or third date. I'd love to just talk a little bit more about who I am now and kind of what's coming up for me in my life as I move forward.
Boom, baby. And what I love about that also is then you get to see how they respond to that. Because if they don't respect that, then they're not respecting your boundary of, hey, I'd like for you to know who I am now. And I'd like to get to know each other now versus why? Is there something bad? Are you still in it? You're like,
right.
How's their reaction? And so again, that's owning your story and what you're going to talk about. So that's so great.
And you also avoid, by doing that, you avoid the, the thing we have in common is both of our former partners left us for other people, or the thing we have in common that we really rally around is this particular disappointing aspect of our divorce. When you do that, you're creating bonds based on being divorced, as opposed to creating bonds based on being single. Being single means I'm not as attached to that story as I am to myself and the future that I'm starting to create. Right.
And who are you? Who are you? Getting to know each other. Yeah, so true. And it's not just even the relationships, the dating people, the people that we date, it's everybody. And so coworkers and other people that you might be associating with. I'm curious, what might you offer to the woman who's thinking right now, well, how do I share my divorce story with other audiences? Do you have any tips on that?
Yeah, you want to be able to say it in a way that doesn't draw people into the undercurrent, right? You have besties, you have maybe parents, whatever. You have people that are in what I call your boohoo crew. They are the people who are real close, who know the real story and who have permission to enter into the dark, deep secrets and really to dog on the whole story, right? When you're talking to people who are outside of your boohoo crew, I want you to be thinking about, how do I share the story in a way that is true and about me? So, for example, my divorce story is, I got married, I had 2 incredible children, and there was a point at which the connection was no longer as strong for my partner, and we ended up being divorced. And one of the things I'm proud of right now is we've figured out how to raise kids pretty well in a 2-address family. So I talked about it. I put a sentence that was rather vague around the ache, right? And then I said what I'm proud of. That's the thing we want to end on, because that's the conversation we really want to be having at the end. We don't want to be saying, and then he left me for that trashy whatever. Well, now we're going to talk about that. Why do we want to put ourselves in the situation of going back and talking about that? We know we've already talked about it 50,000 times with our boohoo crew. When we're in with
the boohoo crew, I love that
person, right? We want to be just talking about, let's create a story around this that I actually want to be telling. I am figuring this out. I am proud of how I'm doing it. Yeah, there's struggles, but I'm kind of a hero.
Yeah. Yeah. Not to mention that every time we go into the boohoo story, we are further anchoring in the negative. What's the word? I can't think of it. The negative story inside of us. And we are continuing that victimization of what happened to us versus how we thrived and who we are now. That's a much better story. And it certainly will lift us up in such a great way. So there's lots of stuff out there. Everybody's talking about lots of different things and in how to heal and how to speak. So what is the work that needs to be done to talk from that really authentic place about your former partner?
In order to do that, your former partner needs to become irrelevant. And that word itself is usually quite appealing to people who have been through divorce. They want their former partner to be irrelevant. And what we know about making something irrelevant is, for example, if my house is a mess, right? It's a mess because I made something more relevant than tidying my home, right? So if I've got a whole bunch of stuff, let's say I got a kid graduating, my house is irrelevant. What became relevant was my kids. So in order for something to become irrelevant, something else has to become more relevant. Right? So when we're talking about how we actually heal, we have to learn how to make that relationship, that person, and that experience less relevant than what's happening now. And it's a work, it's an effort, you have to give attention to it. But when you start doing it, you start to open up the spaces where you can start to tell the story differently. So one of the ways that you do start telling it in a supportive way about your former partner is you have simply got to commit to a strengths-based perspective on this person. Nobody wants to do that. I get it. I didn't want to do it either. One of my mentors encouraged me to do 3 gratitudes for my former partner every day, different every day, no repeats. And I will tell you, I spent a lot of time in bed in those first few days. I did not want to figure out the gratitudes. And the rule was I couldn't get out of bed until I did them. So as I worked on those, I started very slowly to build the assets from which we were going to have a future relationship together. There is a laundry list of things he can't be or won't be. I have it. Everybody has it. Everybody has that list.
Yeah.
I don't look at that list anymore. The spotlight is on the list of things he can and will be. And so I no longer live in that expectation gap of hoping he's going to become all the things that he's already listed out he won't.
Right.
I start celebrating the things that he is.
So when you celebrate and you're putting that energy and highlighting the things that he is, what happens to you?
What happens to you is the focus that we put on them and the hope that we have for them to change, be better, or do better is an energy leak. So when we stop that energy leak, we're able to put more energy into who we are now, into what we're working with now. If you go to work every day and just look at your desk and go, well, I don't have this, 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 and this, so I can't do my job, you'd get fired, right? And yet we show up to our post-divorce life the same way. Well, he's not this, this, and this, so I guess everything has to suck. That's an excuse. And it's not an excuse that probably works for you. I mean, I don't think you're probably liking the outcomes and the results that you're getting from it. So we have to start talking to ourselves differently. And again, I know this isn't common.
No, it's a muscle it's a consciousness and a muscle we have to build. It's not what we're taught. And your boohoo group, I love that, your boohoo posse, it tends to be, and he did this and he did this. And then you go, oh, I'm so sorry for you. I feel so bad for you. And that tends to be a much more common conversation than, well, he really did this and he really is this. And it's just a different energy. Women support each other a lot of the times in the crap that's gone down, instead of the more of the positive version. And of course, there's nothing wrong with sharing some of the things that hurt. I mean, please, definitely connect with your posse. But at the end of the day, where are we hanging our hat and how is it feeling? And I love that you're mentioning the energy leakage, because where our thoughts go, our energy is going to go. And if we're focusing on all the things that are wrong, that's going to lower our vibe, and that's going to have us show up with that energy, not only in our life, but in all our relationships. So I'm really digging what you're saying for sure.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And part of the frustration is, well, I'm not going to just start talking good about him because he doesn't deserve that, or just slap on that sort of like toxic positivity, right? This isn't about faking something. This is about making a countercultural commitment to getting to a different place.
Yes.
And that's a big commitment. And not everybody's going to do it.
No, not everyone's going to do it. Hopefully they will do it more because they're listening to you, and it feels a lot better, and you will feel more empowered when you do it. Because again, where you're focusing, it's going to change how you feel and how you talk to your ex, how you are showing up for your kids, all of that. So I'm really appreciating this dialogue. This is great. So let's talk about the time between divorce and dating. So there's this intermission between the two. What would you say is the best approach to handling that shift and that transition?
The best relationships, my philosophy is that the best, most healthy relationships are two deeply healthy individuals who choose to want each other and don't technically need each other. So what that means is really focusing on becoming the kind of person who has the capacity to have a solid, flexible self, quiet mind, calm heart, grounded responding, and a really strong why about what it is you want to be in life. When you're able to get those things on lockdown, you're offering a future partner the healthy single person that you need to be. If your divorce is overwhelming your experience of your singleness, your readiness to date is at an all-time low.
Yep.
People in those situations, I have plenty of clients who date when they're in that space. And this is what I tell them: it's playtime. it's not soulmate time. It's not super dear partner time. It's playtime, and it's fine to take it. There's consequences for it, but it's fine to take it. We just want to be aware that if we're not in a space to answer, here is what I am ready to give to a relationship, it's time to go back to the drawing board. I hear so many of my clients talk about what they want from the relationship, what they want to get, what they want to receive. That's going to trip them up long term.
I have to tell you, I'm just going to shoot from the hip here. I interview a shit ton of people. And there's just so many golden nuggets that are coming out of your mouth that I have not heard on my show.
Oh, you're so sweet.
Seriously. I mean, it's just, it's full of wisdom. And Soul Sister, I hope you're taking notes and taking this in. I also want to just underline about, the wanting versus giving and the being, and kind of pull it together for a second, because there's something so potent here about readiness and mindset. And if you haven't done the work and you haven't emptied out and you haven't come to a place of that positive muscle of how you're looking at things, you're carrying a lot of baggage, and that energy is going to affect you and your dating. So it is not something we've been taught. And so I'm hearing from you, and I want to support this and underline this, is give yourself some time and work the tools that she's talking about. It's life-changing. I do it. And I think it's so important. I just think this is just really, really good information.
Yeah. And there's a reason I call it the intermission, because, you were talking about living in Manhattan, and I'm going there soon. When you're in an intermission, that's not what you went to the show for. Any intermission, other than the amount of time it needs for you to go to the restroom and get back to your seat, is too long for you. Right. And that's what it feels like. It is a long, overly long intermission between when your divorce is happening and when you are figuring out a dating relationship. We want to hurry up and get Act 2 going. But when we rush Act 2, we really just, hamper.
You have a full bladder. You have a full bladder. You're not going to enjoy it. And then you're going to pee in your pants and ruin it. So you need to take the intermission. You need to have that time.
Yes.
So here's a very interesting question I'd like to ask you. And so many people are curious about this too. What should you look for as you listen to the divorce story of the people you're dating?
Mm-hmm. Well, first of all, just because someone tells a crummy divorce story doesn't mean they have to be kicked to the curb. Otherwise, pretty much everybody would be.
Yeah.
When you hear their divorce story, they get to tell it however they want to, right? They've gone through whatever process they've gone to. It becomes a canned talk after a while, right? They get to tell it however they want to. When you receive it, I want you, after you kind of take a gasp, because it's probably going to be unlovely, I want you to say, what are the questions I could ask that would draw out the things that matter more to me in this story than the dark part? So for example, what's going right now between you and your former partner? When you look back, what do you feel like you've really learned in this divorce? When you think about a future partner, what are the pieces of your first partner that you actually hope still do come along for the ride, right? When you start asking some of those questions, listen to those answers, because the first story is probably going to be pretty crazy, but the way that they're able to respond to your follow-up questions indicates their own interest in adjusting their story, right? And we're all adjusting our story. I know that you have listeners right now who are telling a real crummy story out on their dates, right? But the next one they go on, they're going to be adjusting, and we're all doing that. So you're just really doing a bit of a temperature test on whether or not they're willing to turn up the heat on refining that story and making it a little bit sweeter.
So good. So good. Good questions. Because then you're going to really find out so much more about how they look at things, how they showed up. Just really good. Really good.
Yeah. But I think most people can walk away with something, but if they walk away with their answer as, well, I learned never to date a narcissist, or I learned never put my money in the same bank account, right? Those kinds of learnings they're weak, right? They're not really the kind we're looking for. But I think most people have, again, a hero's journey that they might not have spoken or tapped into, that your questions can really draw out. And, I find the way we tell our divorce stories to be such a powerful way of healing. And when we can do that, even as two people who've gone through a divorce, female to female, male to male, doesn't really matter. There is something inspiring that happens to us, right? When we listen to other people talk about what they've come through.
Yeah. Yeah. Totally agree. Totally agree. So I know you have this awesome gift for this soul sister, how to make your former partner irrelevant masterclass. Tell us more about that.
Yes, it's a masterclass I did on the back end of my last summit. I do a summit once or twice a year called Divorce Differently, where I really just pull in a whole bunch of speakers who can talk about what does it mean to become beautiful again during and after divorce. And so this masterclass, this idea again of being irrelevant, which I talked about earlier, people want to know, how do I get free of this story and of my mind, which is always thinking about it and racing on it and going back to it over and over again. And so in this masterclass, I just really spell out the specifics of, these are the steps you need to take in order to make them irrelevant. And then you need to do them again, and then you need to do it again, and then you do it again, right? You can't just listen to the masterclass and be healed. You're going to have to listen to it, and then you're going to have to do it. But it has been one of my most popular pieces, and I'm really thrilled to share it with your audience.
So awesome. So awesome. I can't believe we're done. I want to just like keep talking to you for hours.
Same. You're a lovely interviewer. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you so much for taking some time. I mean, this really is such an important topic. I mean, pretty much everyone that I work with has been through it and has these stories, and will be meeting people that have the stories, and navigating these divorce waters can be really tricky. And there's so much that we can learn from each other in our storytelling, and how we tell our stories. So, and how we listen as well. So thank you. Thank you so much for being here.
Of course. It really was a delight. Thank you for having me.
All right, soul sister, that's our episode for today. If you are listening on the audio, please do us a favor and subscribe, and maybe even write a review. That's how other people find us. And for those of you that are watching on our video, our YouTube station, I'm going to encourage you to subscribe. Click the bell, that little bell thing, so that you're notified, and tell some of your soul sisters about this amazing episode that we just did. Andrea, again, thank you so much. And soul sister, have an amazing week. See you next time. Mwah.